Hello everybody, San here, engineer, MBA, and investor. And in today's video, I want to talk about an article that goes over Bionano Genomics, the company. This article is written by Health and Wealth on Substack. This is actually an article that was shared a lot on social media, so I'm going to go over it. I'm going to do my best to cover it. We'll read the article together. We'll point out some topics here and there, make some analogies with CRISPR companies, and we'll hope that we can learn something out of this video. Now, before we do that, before we dive deep into this article, you guys know the drill. Like this video, smash that like button. YouTube algorithms make it that if you don't like this video, if you don't comment, if you don't share it, unfortunately, these videos don't get to our other viewers because the community of genomics is so big. And unfortunately, there are not too many creators. So that's what we're trying to do. That's why I ask you guys to like these videos. That's the only thing I ask besides liking these videos and subscribing, right? If you haven't subscribed yet, please do consider doing so. And if you want to go a step further, you can always hit that notification bell for our videos to get you faster. So this article here, Bionano Genomics, the Swiss Army knife of cytogenetic testing and more. Why the genomic revolution needs tools beyond sequencing and how Bionano is in a league of its own. Now, we've repeated some of these topics in the past, right? We've made a couple of videos on Bionano Genomics at this point. We're not foreign about this company, but this is the first time I'm covering an article written by this person here. This is actually Christina. She's written this amazing article. I went over this article before making this video, obviously, but like I said, I want to go over this article as we make this video because, again, the channel here, the purpose of the channel, guys, is to cover the genomic space, right? And the genomic space is so big, so vast. There's a reason why the ARK-G fund, ARK Invest Genomics Fund, they don't just include CRISPR companies. In fact, CRISPR companies are a minority in that fund. They actually have a lot of companies. In fact, they have companies like Pacific Biosciences, which BNGO is sort of competing, but not really, right? This is not a direct competition. Bionano Genomics is basically on its own. They have what we call the blue ocean analogy. A lot of people use that in business where you have the blue ocean, right? The opportunities are so vast. No one is doing it. You're the only one doing it. I wouldn't call it monopoly. That's not the definition of monopoly, but they're definitely around that type of topic, right? Where they're basically in a sector where no one is doing anything about it. They're the only one doing it. And it just feels like some people are just confusing Pacific Bio with Illumina, with Bionano Genomics, and that's where the confusion is. And I think that's what this article really tried to debunk, and that's what we'll try to debunk as well in today's video. But again, like we've said in the past, genomics, there will be many winners, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. This is not a sum game, right? This is not where one has to lose for the other to win. The total addressable markets are so vast. Atoms to atoms is the biggest challenge we face as humans today, right? We've done information to information, bits to bits, right? This is what the internet has done in the recent decades, right? It took decades and decades, like 30, let's say like 30, 40 years, like maybe 30 years to have what we have today. And we still have so much potential to go forward with the internet and with everything with tech companies and so on. But when it comes to biotech, when it comes to genomics, we are so early, right? And that's what I wanted to start with before really heading into the articles. But let's try our best here. Let's try to make justice out of this article, and let's try to read this article, and let's try not to fumble too much. And like some of my viewers said, let's try not to mispronounce some words and skip some words, right? So I'll do my best, and obviously I won't read the article word by word, but I'll cover some highlights here and there. So a couple of highlights of this article is that Bionano is flying under the radar in the bubbly genomic space, and you should be aware of. They develop technology to detect large changes in a genome structural variation through a process called optical genome mapping, and that's what we call OGM, right? The acronym. This is catching field experts' attention because it's a 3-in-1 plus more platform doing traditional gold standard tests to do cost effectively, reliability, and at scale, right? Bionano is well positioned to be Illumina of mapping technology, which eventually will replace existing chromosome level cytogenetic tests entirely and support identifying new therapeutic targets. However, their success heavily relies on third-party labs pivoting away from legacy techniques they're already using to Bionano system, right? So pretty straightforward, right? And by the way, I will link the article in the description below, and I highly recommend you guys to subscribe to this Substack creator, again, Health and Wealth. That's basically the name of it. Like I said, I'll link in the description below. I highly advise you guys to subscribe to these types of creators. These types of creators are doing this out of their own time. They're putting time into it. And as a YouTube creator, I totally understand and can sympathize with the efforts that are put into making these articles. These are not just words that you put in. These are a lot of revisions, a lot of research. And you can bet that when you post these types of technical articles, you want to make sure that you're not making a mistake, and you want to make sure that there's no ambiguity, right? So highly advise you guys to subscribe to them. So what's confusing to most people is there are many ways to read DNA, right? Each method serves at different purposes, like a separate tools in a toolbox. Different technologies also determine the level of granularity that you can read in genome. To use an analogy, different type of planes fly at a different cruising altitudes, right? So you can clearly see here an analogy being used, right? And this is the analogy being used here in this space that what BNGO is trying to tackle, where it is going, like for example, BNGO would be the jet, right? And Illumina could be something more like a helicopter, right? This is what they're saying here. In recent years, much attention has been focused on refining under 10,000 feet views such through DNA sequencing by companies like Illumina. So then the next question for you after I tell you this information should be, well, why hasn't companies covered that, right? Why haven't companies covered jet type of altitudes in the genomic space, right? When it comes to detecting, right? Like when it comes to reading genome, right? And we'll go over that shortly, but just know that this is basically a great analogy, right? High level view, lower level view, basically a helicopter versus jet. Illumina, which is worth billion dollars, multiple X from what BNGO is worth. Obviously, their revenue line is different, their product line is different, the maturity as a company is different. But just keep that in mind, right? It is not Illumina versus BNGO. Both technologies can assist each other. Both technologies can actually have different use cases in different applications, right? Depending on what is the use case need, right? So what's particular about cytogenetics is the tools used today are the same integrated tools used decades ago. Karyotype, microarray, and FISH, right? So over here, they're explaining here, this technique is called optical genome mapping. That's basically the technique that BNGO is using, and that is the flying at a high range altitude. Now, obviously, we're talking about, this is an analogy, right? We're talking about genomics. We're talking about how we're looking at the bigger picture, right? And we'll have another picture here in this article that explains exactly how it looks like. But it offers a Swiss Army knife solution by combining all three traditional tests in one platform and can detect things that existing methods would otherwise miss. Very important, guys. So Illumina, whatever they're doing, obviously are accomplishing many things, many great things. A lot of investors are loving the company. But just know that whatever they're doing, they're missing out on things. This is known. Like, this is not just something good to have. This is a necessity. This is a requirement. This is something that we need in the genomic space. You cannot just have something that only covers a small portion. You need to cover all cases, right? And that's what BNGO is sort of betting on, is like companies, institutions, healthcare facilities, patients ultimately will quickly realize that there is a need to discover some of these diseases that cannot be discovered. Some of these genome-specific reading cannot be read when you try to do what Illumina basically are doing. You need a company like BNGO to come in the picture and offer their technologies to read that high-level view, right? So what's this all about? Why aren't people talking about it? Well, people aren't talking about it because they don't really understand the technology. They don't really understand, how OGM may eventually replace gold standard cytogenetics tests. They don't understand why genome mapping and sequencing are synergistic, right? There is a synergy between it. It's not competitive directly, right? Both can win. Both should win, right? How Bionano can be used in clinical settings, challenges to overcome, the big picture, right? So this is the picture I was talking about. So clearly you can see, there are many types of structural variations, right? This is so complicated. This is what the CEO of Ginkgo Bioworks talks a lot about, right? There's, moving atoms to atoms, in my opinion, and to many experts' beliefs, it will be the biggest challenge that humanity ever does. Right? Internet was huge, it was big, but ultimately you're moving bits to bits. You're basically moving information to information, but you're not actually going in the human body, in the human genome, and actually reading that data and doing something about it. And this is what we talk about diseases. This is why we have diseases. This is why we have cancers. This is why people, have issues with their bodies, their health. Obviously, there's prevention. You can be healthy. You can obviously, just like I have to go to the gym later, later today I have to go to the gym, but I could be going to the gym for the next 10 years, just like I've been going for the last 10, 11, 12 years. And I can still catch a specific disease, and it's not going to change that, right? There's a question of probability. There's a question of genetics. There's a question, it could be so many things, right? And we don't even know why it could be. And that's why you have these types of companies that want to detect these types of diseases early on, that want to detect them and then do something about it. And that's where CRISPR companies, those types of companies come into play. Obviously, like the Moderna's as well, the RNA technology and so on. So keep that in mind, guys. OGM works first by isolating DNA from sample cells, then fluorescent tags bind to sites along the genome, creating unique patterns for each section of the DNA. These fluorescent tags are like bulbs or strings, lights, or unevenly spaced apart. The DNA is then loaded into a chip for imaging, where it uncoils, like untangling like a very long string of string lights. Finally, algorithms cover these images into a genome map. Bionano visualizes the data using these funky looking circular plots, right? So this is what we're talking about. Comparison from circular plot from two samples with tumor cell line A, normal cell line B, right? This is what you have with normal cell line, but then when you have tumors, you can clearly see there's something going on here. This is bad. This is where you have your tumor, right? This is something what OGM sort of provides, right? This is more a visual representation of what it looks like. And I think it's very important for us, to investors, to see how it looks, right? You don't want things to just look, it's great to see these types of text, these types of string, but when you have visual representation of what it's actually doing, I think it's amazing, right? You can clearly see the difference, right? There's no ambiguity here. This is bad, this is good. Obviously, you have a great picture here to show it, so. OGM may eventually replace gold standard cytogenetic tests, right? So this is what sort of is what the company is betting on. This is what many investors are looking for. Bionano current cost per genome is about $450, right? And is expected to cost less than $100 by 2023. And there's a source here to claim it from Seeking Alpha. Resolution gets down to 500 base pairs, right? Variants detect even in small samples. Shorter turnaround time for results and less labor intensives. 3 samples require less than 3 minutes of hands-on lab technician time. You don't even need it to be a biostatistician to analyze data, because the software does it all the heavy lifting. So obviously there is a software component of it. Sapphire, which is a hardware component from Bionano Genomics, they're basically selling those hardware, and they have sort of a projection. They posted that in their investor presentation. But what a lot of investors are missing out on is the software portion. The acquisition of biodiscovery sort of solidified their thesis that, look, they're going big on software. They want to optimize the process and make it easier for their customers, for their B2B customers, right, for their partners. That's what we're seeing here. The shorter, that's what we're talking about, less labor intensive, right? That's what we're talking about, shorter turnaround time, right? This is how you get it done, right? You have hardware, you have software, you combine these two, you're scaling up vertically, right, with both of those sectors, and then you can sort of leverage that, and then is economies of scale, right? You have more data, you can have better results, you can optimize processes. Obviously, this is a lot more complicated than what I'm making it sound. We've done it with tech companies, but like I said, moving atoms to atoms, genome reading is a different beast. But you can make parallels, and I think you can make parallels. That's my thesis, right? I'm not saying I'm right on this. I'm just saying that my experience here in software companies, me as a background in software engineering, I can tell you that I can see some parallels happening here. And ultimately, everyone's going to take the Apple playbook, Apple's playbook, right? What they did with the iPhone, then Apple Store. Everyone's gonna do that, right? And the last video I made, I titled as Bionano Genomics can be the Netflix, the new Netflix of genomics. Food for thought, right? Again, all speculation, not financial advice. Do your own research. We never provide financial advice. So yeah, so what's more is that it appears that OGM higher resolution technology is picking up on structural variations that would otherwise be missed by karyotype or microarrays. So the standard status quo is missing out on structural variations that OGM can actually achieve, right? The picking up on structural variations. So already there, you see it's not just a nice to have, it's a requirement. You don't want to miss these. When we're talking about going in the next decade fighting against cancer, you need these types of technologies to come in surface, right? So really nice here. So I'm going to read some bold text here. I think this is going to be useful for us here. Bionano doesn't compete or substitute any sequencing technology. In reality, genome mapping complements sequencing by putting pieces together more accurately. Sequencing works by chopping up DNA into smaller pieces and sticking them back together, right? And this is what we're seeing on the left side of this picture. Again, another analogy, you can see a bird here. You can see like these little puzzles. This is what sequencing is about. But then on the right side, this is what BNGO is about. The long read sequencing creates big read, fewer puzzles, and compared to shorter read sequencing, which increase cost but decrease the chances of missing stuff, right? So you're seeing here. Genome mapping is like having the reference picture on the puzzle block in the front of you. It makes it easier to know where to put each of the puzzle pieces correctly, right? So you want to have the bigger picture. This is what BNGO covers, right? OGM long read sequencing, right? And OGM short read sequencing. But can structural variation be picked up without OGM? Possibly if computational methods improve in the cost of, but thus far it's proven to be challenging and expensive. Pacific Bio can only detect 72% of variation, the research being linked here. Bionano picks it up. What's more, the Pacific Bio method costs 10,000 to 20K per genome, whereas the OGM is less than 500, and again, it's expected to go 100, less than 100 by 2023. So it feels like OGM is here to stay for a long time. So I think this type of article is amazing to understand the basics and it's to understand the competition. I'm putting competition in quote here because it's not really competition. Competition is doing something that both, at least two entities are doing at the same time for the same type of product or the same type of goal for customers around the world, right? For example, you may have, an electrical vehicle from Tesla, right? And then you have Volkswagen, who's basically working on their ID3 model, and that's basically competing with Tesla for their electrical vehicle. Now, what people aren't realizing is that although Tesla vehicles are way superior, it's still competition. Whether you want to admit it or not, it's still competition. As a consumer, you have to pick an electrical vehicle. Now, obviously, one party offers a lot more features, a lot more quality, a lot more safer, and that's Tesla. But that doesn't mean they're not competing. They're obviously competing. Now, relevant to here, Bionano is not even competing with Pacific Biosciences, right? Pacific Bio are doing something that Bionano is actually basically patching up for what they're missing out on, right? Bionano is basically doing something that Pacific Bio cannot do. So this is not a competition. Now, I understand as an investor, you're always looking for competition. This is like the biggest thesis. Like when you read investment books, this is why I don't read investment books these days, to be honest. I just read articles, I listen to individuals, investors. I don't read books because these books are always going to give high level things. They're great for newbies and for starters, but once you get in this space for quite a few years, and you're moving them from verticals to verticals, you see patterns, right? And people are trying always to put companies against each other. They're always trying to find reasons they're always trying to find the same framework. What does the competition look like, right? And then you're looking at Illumina, you're looking at Pacific Bio, and then you look at BNGO. You're like, well, there's no way, Illumina could just literally, spin off a program that, puts Bionano to shame. But it doesn't work like that, right? They don't have the technology. They don't have the talent. Their business line is not like that. They have shareholders to report to. They can't just be doing something that out of the realm here. It's just out of the random here. It's a huge company. When you're a huge company, especially when you're in a company backed by an institution like ARK Invest, you just can't take these types of risk, right? And OGM is basically BNGO is betting on the risk where these companies are not going to catch up. They're not going to implement these type of program. And even if they do, it'll take a long time to start. And then you have these Sapphire systems already being sold to enterprises. It's already being sold to clinical settings and to research labs. So we'll see how it goes. There are obviously challenges with this company and with this technology. Switching costs from legacy techniques to OGM is a huge burden, right? This is not easy, right? These coming from a background with enterprise experience, you have legacy system. For me and you, it's very clear, you want to go with the latest and greatest. Ultimately, long term, you'll reduce cost. But for these types of corporations, institutions, they have to report to so many people. There's so many bureaucrats. There's so many contracts. There's so many regulations, so many processes that you have to go through. And I'm not trying to be pessimist. I'm just trying to be realistic at this point, is that there are challenges. And again, this is going to take some time, right? There are reasons why many companies have never entered in this space, not specifically in the mapping space or sequencing, but just in genomics. Is there many regulations? You're sort of bound to like regulations with the FDA, and then you have these processes, these systems, like from legacy systems that, if a lot of companies, a lot of, business suits, bureaucrats have this mentality that if it's not broken, don't fix it. But the problem is it is broken, right? You're not reading all sequences, all structural variations. You're reporting misses. It's affecting patients. We cannot move in a future where you can't cover certain cases of diseases. You cannot cover certain patients' diseases. You need efficiency. You need to provide 100%. You need to aim for 100%. 72% for Pacific Biosciences will not cover it. Okay, and don't forget, total address market is so huge, right? It's so huge. And I truly believe this is a challenge, and I think this is what the leadership is working on for BNGO, and as investors have pointed out. So I'm not saying anything new. But when you focus on the big picture, what you see the company is going in the next 5-10 years, OGM will likely replace all legacy systems when it comes to sequencing, and genome mapping already complements sequencing efforts. So there's a complementary effort here from the company. And Illumina, as they get more investors to pour money into those types of companies, Pacific Bio, Illumina, I think BNGO will definitely come to surface a lot more. I think there'll be many winners. I love this article. Like I said, I will link this article below. We already went well over 20 minutes. I think we'll end this video like this. Again, highly recommend you guys to read it. Leave me comments below in the discussion. What do you guys think about Christina's article here, or from Health and Wealth here from Substack? Highly advise you guys to subscribe to their article. It's an amazing article. I love what creators such as Health and Wealth is doing. I think this is amazing. We'll leave it off like this, guys. If you found value from this video, do like this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. And hopefully you guys appreciate these types of videos. I know I cover a lot of these CRISPR companies, gene editing companies, and we go over a lot of these companies, especially when there's news out there. But it's very important to cover the genomic space. There's so many things going on, so many winners, so many opportunities. You have to do your own research. You have to read these types of articles. You have to do your own research, guys. Very important. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to YouTube commenters. Listen to yourself. Do your own research. Put some time and effort into it. Or, you can just always go with an ARK Genomics fund and, take the safer route. But you already know my opinion on that. We'll leave it off like this before we unwind and go on a crazy tangent. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see each other in the next video. So have a beautiful Saturday, beautiful weekend. It's raining here. But hopefully wherever you are in the world, whether it's in Canada, US, Europe, Asia, we got a bunch of viewers from Asia actually. Hopefully you're going to have a great weekend with great weather. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see each other in the next video. Thank you.